At the bottom of the world, there is an ocean with no walls. No continents block it, no land slows it down. It circles the entire planet, non-stop, forever. And inside it, evolution ran a different experiment. The animals here grew bigger, meaner, stranger. A squid the size of a school bus hunts in total darkness. A seal hunts other predators. A whale's heart beats twice per minute. And beneath the ice, in places sunlight has never touched, creatures are eating rock. We are going inside the Southern Ocean. We will follow the predators, descend into the vents, witness the hunts, and find out why this one body of water controls the temperature of the entire planet. If you enjoy what we cover, a like and subscribe keeps this going. Prepare yourselves. We begin. There's a place on Earth where the ocean never ends. Most oceans hit a coastline eventually. The Atlantic runs into Europe, the Pacific runs into Asia, but the Southern Ocean circles the entire planet without stopping once. No continent gets in the way. No landmass slows it down. It is the only ocean on Earth that connects to itself, running in a complete ring around Antarctica, forever. That single fact changes everything inside it. Picture a river. Now picture that river has no banks, no bends, and no end. It just keeps moving, faster and faster, building energy for millions of years. That is what happened here. The Southern Ocean became the most powerful body of water on the planet, and the animals that live inside it had to adapt to something relentless. The ocean sits between Antarctica to the south and the tips of South America, Africa, and Australia to the north. It covers over 8 million square miles. To picture that, imagine the entire United States copied and pasted nearly 3 times, then flooded. That is the Southern Ocean. For most of human history, sailors avoided it. The waves here regularly reach 60 feet tall, the height of a 6-story building. The wind screams at over 100 miles per hour for weeks without stopping. Sailors in the 1800s called the latitudes of the Southern Ocean the Roaring Forties, the Furious Fifties, and the Screaming Sixties, based on how savage each band of water was. Ships vanished there, entire crews disappeared, and yet, underneath all that rage, life exploded. The reason starts with something invisible. When wind drags across water for thousands of miles with nothing to interrupt it, it does something powerful. It stirs. Deep, cold water from the ocean floor gets pulled up toward the surface in a process called upwelling. That deep water carries nutrients, the biological equivalent of fertilizer, up into the sunlit zone where tiny plants can use them. The result is one of the most productive patches of ocean on the planet. More nutrients mean more microscopic plants. More plants mean more of the small creatures that eat them, and more of those small creatures mean more of everything above them on the food chain. Size is rewarded here. Speed is rewarded here. Endurance is rewarded here. The Southern Ocean does not produce average animals. It produces record breakers. A scientist named Henri Weimarskirch spent years tracking albatrosses from the Southern Ocean. He found one bird flew nearly 600 miles in a single day, riding the same relentless winds that terrified sailors for centuries. The ocean that punished humans was powering animals into something extraordinary. Every predator in this video owes its existence to what this ocean does to water. The cold, the current, the upwelling. Strip any one of those away and the giants disappear. And speaking of the current, the engine driving all of this has a name. Scientists call it the Antarctic Circumpolar Current. It is the largest ocean current on Earth, and it carries more water than every river on the planet combined. What that current does to temperature, to oxygen, and to the size of living things is where the story gets strange. It moves like a slow conveyor belt, but its scale is almost impossible to picture. The Antarctic Circumpolar Current flows eastward around Antarctica without stopping, driven by those screaming southern winds. Scientists have measured it. Every single second, it moves 600 times more water than the Amazon River. 600 times. The Amazon is already one of the largest rivers on Earth, dumping enough water into the Atlantic to dilute its saltiness for miles offshore. Now multiply that by 600 and keep it moving in a loop forever. This current does not just circle the planet, it connects all the world's oceans. The Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian Ocean. They all feed into it and receive water back from it. Oceanographers call it the global ocean conveyor belt, and the Southern Ocean is the engine at its center. Here is why that matters for the predators we are about to meet. Cold water holds more dissolved oxygen than warm water does. The same way a cold soda holds its fizz longer than a warm one, cold seawater traps oxygen from the atmosphere and keeps it. The Southern Ocean is one of the coldest bodies of water on Earth. Its temperatures hover near 28 degrees Fahrenheit, just barely below freezing, cold enough to kill most animals within minutes of exposure. But for the animals built to live there, That cold is rocket fuel. More oxygen means more energy available per breath. More energy means muscles can grow larger and work harder. Over millions of years, the creatures of the Southern Ocean evolved to take advantage of water so oxygen rich it was like living at altitude in reverse. Instead of thin air at the top of a mountain, they had thick, dense, oxygen packed water at the bottom of the world. Scientists noticed this pattern across dozens of species. Antarctic invertebrates, the crabs, worms, and sea spiders living on the ocean floor, grow to sizes that seem wrong. A sea spider in a warm tropical ocean is about the size of a fingernail. A sea spider in the Southern Ocean can be as wide as a dinner plate. Researchers call this polar gigantism, and the oxygen theory is the leading explanation for why it happens. The current also creates something else, a wall. Where the Antarctic circumpolar current runs, it creates a boundary called the Antarctic Convergence, also known as the polar front. At this line, cold Antarctic water meets warmer water from the north and sinks beneath it. The temperature drops by several degrees within just a few miles. Marine life on either side of this line is dramatically different. Cross the polar front heading south, and you enter a biological zone unlike anything else on the planet. The creatures on the southern side evolved in isolation for millions of years, cut off from the rest of the ocean's gene pool by that wall of current. They had to solve survival problems that animals in other oceans never faced. One of those solutions was antifreeze. Another was size. Another was darkness. The current also drives something else upward from the deep, something that, pound for pound, may be the most important animal alive. They look harmless. They are about 2 inches long, pink, translucent, and shaped like a tiny shrimp. You could hold 100 of them in your hand, but remove them from the Southern Ocean and almost every large animal in this video dies within a generation. Antarctic krill are the foundation of everything here. A single krill weighs less than a gram, but they do not travel alone. They travel in swarms so dense that they turn the ocean red-pink for miles. One documented swarm off the coast of Antarctica contained an estimated 500 million tons of krill, making it potentially the largest gathering of animal biomass ever recorded anywhere on Earth. That swarm stretched for miles in every direction, visible from the air. Blue whales eat krill, penguins eat krill, seals eat krill, fish eat krill, squid eat krill. Almost every large predator in the Southern Ocean either eats krill directly or eats something that ate krill. The entire food web balances on this 2-inch animal. What makes krill remarkable is not just their abundance, it is their survival skill. Antarctic krill can live for up to 7 years, which is extraordinary for a creature their size. Most shrimp-like animals live for 1 or 2 years at most. Krill live longer because they evolved a trick no other animal their size has mastered. When food runs out in winter, when the ocean surface freezes and the microscopic plants they eat disappear, krill shrink, physically shrink. Their bodies actually get smaller, burning their own muscles and organs to survive. Then, when food returns in spring, they rebuild. Scientists who discovered this were stunned. An animal that can voluntarily reduce its own body size and then reconstruct it is doing something that should be biologically impossible by normal rules. Krill also feed under the ice. When the ocean surface freezes over in winter, krill scrape algae off the underside of sea ice, hanging upside down on frozen ceilings miles wide, eating in the dark. They survive when nothing should survive. A researcher named Bettina Meyer spent years studying krill under Antarctic ice. She found that even in midwinter, when the ice was thick and the water was nearly at freezing, swarms of krill stayed active, feeding, spawning, and moving. The cold that kills most animals energizes krill. Now scale that up. In a good year, the total mass of Antarctic krill in the Southern Ocean may exceed the total mass of all humans on Earth. Every person alive combined, outweighed by tiny pink crustaceans living at the bottom of the world. Every predator we are about to meet depends on this system being intact. If krill disappear, the chain collapses from the bottom up, and something in the deep dark is already waiting to intercept the krill before they reach the surface. Imagine a school bus. Now give it 8 arms, 2 long tentacles, hooks instead of suckers, and eyes the size of dinner plates. Put it 1 mile underwater in total darkness. That is the colossal squid. The colossal squid is the largest invertebrate on Earth. An invertebrate is any animal without a backbone, and the colossal squid defeats every other creature in that category by a massive margin. A fully grown adult can reach 23 feet in length and weigh over 1,000 pounds. The tentacles alone can stretch longer than a pickup truck. For most of history, scientists knew about this animal only from pieces, partial tentacles found in the stomachs of sperm whales, beaks recovered from deep sea trawls. For decades, no one had ever seen a living adult in its natural habitat. Scientists pieced together what it looked like from fragments, the way detectives reconstruct a crime scene from scattered clues. Then, in 2007, a fishing vessel operating in the Ross Sea near Antarctica hauled up something unexpected. A colossal squid had attacked a Patagonian toothfish on the line and refused to let go, even as the line dragged it upward. The crew spent 2 hours pulling this animal toward the surface. When it finally appeared, the crew went silent. It was the largest colossal squid ever captured, weighing over 1,000 pounds, its body alone over 6 feet long. The colossal squid hunts in the deep ocean, below 3,000 feet, in water so dark that no sunlight reaches it. At that depth, the pressure is over 100 times greater than at the surface. To picture that pressure, imagine stacking 100 cars on top of a single square foot of space. That is what the squid moves through effortlessly. Its hunting tool is not speed. Colossal squid are actually slow swimmers for their size. Their tool is ambush. They wait, almost motionless in the dark, then strike with those long tentacles. The hooks on their tentacles rotate, cutting into prey rather than just gripping it, and those eyes. The colossal squid has the largest eyes of any animal ever documented on Earth. Each eye is roughly 11 inches across, about the size of a soccer ball. In the total blackness of the deep ocean, those massive eyes can detect the faint bioluminescent glow of prey moving nearby, the same way a security camera picks up heat in the dark. Scientists believe the colossal squid can see a sperm whale approaching from over 300 feet away in total darkness, giving it just enough time to react. The sperm whale, the one predator large enough to hunt the colossal squid. That battle between two giants, happening right now, miles beneath the surface, has never been witnessed by a single human being, but we know it happens. We know because of the scars. 11 inches across, that is the diameter of the colossal squid's eye, measured on the largest specimen ever collected. To put that in perspective, the eye of a blue whale, the largest animal on Earth, is about 4 inches across. The colossal squid's eye is nearly 3 times larger, inside a body far smaller. That gap is worth stopping on, because it reveals something specific about the deep ocean. Size matters for eyes in darkness, for a precise physical reason. A larger eye collects more light. It works the same way a large telescope mirror gathers more light from distant stars than a small one does. At the surface, sunlight is plentiful, and a small eye works fine. But every 30 feet you descend into the ocean, roughly half of the remaining light disappears. By 300 feet down, you are in permanent twilight. By 3,000 feet, you are in absolute, total darkness. The colossal squid lives below that line. It should need no eyes at all down there. Many deep-sea creatures are completely blind. So why does this animal have the largest eyes in the world? Because the darkness is not perfectly dark. Living things at those depths produce their own light, a process called bioluminescence. When a creature moves through the water, it disturbs other tiny organisms that flash briefly in response. A predator moving through the deep ocean leaves a temporary trail of cold blue light, the way a boat leaves a wake on the surface. To a large enough eye, that glow is visible. Scientists ran calculations on the colossal squid's eye and concluded that it is specifically tuned to detect the bioluminescent glow of sperm whales moving through the water at a distance. An eye any smaller would miss that glow. An eye that large can pick it up from over 100 feet away in total darkness. The squid did not grow enormous eyes to hunt. It grew them to run. A sperm whale in the deep ocean is a 40-foot, 80,000-pound torpedo descending from above. It can hold its breath for over 90 minutes. It navigates by echolocation, sending out clicks that return as echoes from nearby objects. For years, scientists assumed the squid had no defense against this. Then they looked at the eye data again. If the squid can see a whale's bioluminescent trail before the whale's echolocation clicks locate the squid, it has a small but real window to move. Even a slow squid can create enough distance in that window to escape. The enormous eyes are a survival mechanism, an early warning system built for the deep dark. Other deep-sea animals developed different solutions to the same problem. Some became transparent, nearly invisible even to giant eyes, Some shut down all bioluminescence entirely and moved in absolute darkness at absolute silence, but the colossal squid bet everything on seeing first. Down below, where the squid lurks, something else moves through the cold water with its own biological secret, something that should freeze solid but somehow does not. The water temperature in parts of the Southern Ocean drops to 28 degrees Fahrenheit. That is below the freezing point of fresh water, and yet fish live there. Fish that are mostly water inside. Fish that, by every rule of biology, should be frozen solid. They survive because they cheated. The Antarctic toothfish is one of the largest fish in the Southern Ocean, reaching up to 7 feet long and weighing over 300 pounds. It lives year-round in water cold enough to turn most fish into ice. Its secret is a set of proteins in its blood and body fluids that physically stop ice crystals from forming. Scientists call them antifreeze glycoproteins. They work by binding to the surface of any ice crystal that begins to form and blocking it from growing. Picture trying to build a wall and someone keeps grabbing each brick the moment you set it down. The ice crystal starts and the protein immediately coats it, preventing it from expanding and spreading through the fish's tissues. This is one of the cleanest examples of evolution solving a specific problem. Tens of millions of years ago, when Antarctica cooled and the Southern Ocean began to freeze seasonally, most fish died off. The ancestors of the toothfish had a mutation that produced these proteins. The fish with that mutation survived. The fish without it did not. Over millions of years, the protein system became more refined, more powerful, and eventually allowed toothfish to colonize water so cold that no other large fish can compete. The toothfish is now essentially alone at the top of the fish layer in the Southern Ocean. It grows slowly, up to 50 years old, in near freezing water where its metabolism barely ticks over. That slow metabolism means it needs very little food. It waits, it drifts, it ambushes. When it does strike, it swallows prey whole. Fish, squid, krill, smaller toothfish. It is a generalist ambush predator, patient as a trap. Fishermen discovered the toothfish in the 1980s and found it tasted exceptional. It was renamed for the market as Chilean sea bass, and demand exploded. Illegal fishing ships swarmed the Southern Ocean. Scientists tracking toothfish populations watched the numbers collapse in some areas in less than a decade. A fish that evolved over tens of millions of years was being pulled out of the ocean faster than it could possibly reproduce. International agreements eventually created managed fishing zones, and toothfish populations began recovering in some regions. But the scars from that overfishing remain in certain areas where the fish have still not returned to former numbers. Something that hunts toothfish has no such legal protection. It is fast, powerful, and one of the most effective ambush predators in the Southern Ocean. And it grins at you. Most people think of seals as round, gentle, clumsy animals that flop around on rocks. The leopard seal destroyed that image. It is 12 feet long. It weighs over 800 pounds. Its head is enormous relative to its body, disproportionately large, with a jaw that opens wide enough to swallow a penguin whole. Its teeth are interlocked, and when its mouth is closed, it appears to be smiling. That permanent grin made it famous in photographs. It made early explorers underestimate it. They quickly learned not to. Leopard seals are one of the only seal species on Earth that actively hunts warm-blooded prey as a regular part of their diet. Most seals eat fish and squid. The leopard seal does too, but it also hunts penguins and other seals, including young Weddell seals and crab-eater seals. It sits at the top of the Southern Ocean food chain alongside orcas, and unlike most top predators, it hunts alone. Watch a leopard seal hunt a penguin, and the strategy becomes clear immediately. The seal does not chase. It waits. It patrols the edges of ice sheets where penguins must enter and exit the water. The moment a penguin hits the surface, the seal strikes from below, moving with a burst of speed that seems impossible for something that size. When it catches a penguin, the leopard seal does something specific. It grabs the bird by its feet and whips it repeatedly against the water surface, snapping it back and forth like someone shaking out a towel. This strips the feathers and skin from the body in large sheets, leaving the meat exposed. Scientists who first documented this behavior were startled by its efficiency. Leopard seals have also been documented approaching researchers in inflatable boats and attempting to offer them penguins, bringing dead or stunned birds to the boat and leaving them on the pontoon. Scientists believe this is a behavior they use with younger seals, essentially trying to teach. The fact that they direct it toward humans suggests they view people as large, incompetent predators who need feeding. One researcher, Paul Nicklin, a wildlife photographer, entered the water near a large female leopard seal in Antarctica to photograph her. She immediately approached him, opened her jaws around his head, and held it there for a moment before releasing him. She then spent 4 days repeatedly bringing him penguins, alive, dead, and wounded, apparently trying to feed him. Nicklin said it was the most terrifying and extraordinary experience of his career. The leopard seal hunts all year. It does not migrate. In winter, it simply targets whatever is available under the ice. Beneath the ice is a different world, and one seal has explored it more deeply than any other animal alive. The ice surface above is solid. Below it, the water is dark, and there is almost no way to find air. The Weddell seal lives with this problem every day. Named after the British sealing captain who first described them, Weddell seals are the southernmost living mammals on Earth. They breed on the sea ice directly adjacent to Antarctica. In winter temperatures that drop to minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit with wind chill, they raise their pups on ice so far south that in midwinter, sunlight does not appear for months. To feed, they must dive beneath the ice and hunt. And those dives are extraordinary. A Weddell seal can hold its breath for up to 80 minutes and descend to depths of over 2,000 feet, roughly a third of a mile straight down. That is the equivalent of diving to the 50th floor of a building below the surface of the ocean. While doing this, the seal's heart rate drops from around 100 beats per minute to just 4 or 5 beats per minute, slowing nearly to a stop to conserve oxygen. But the most impressive part is the navigation. The ice above a Weddell seal can be miles thick in places and absolutely featureless from below. To breathe, the seal must find one of the natural cracks or breathing holes in the ice, the same ones it uses to enter and exit. Scientists tracked Weddell seals on dives lasting over an hour and found the seals traveled miles horizontally under the ice before returning to their original breathing hole with precision. How they navigate this way remains one of the open questions in marine biology. They may use magnetic fields. They may use memory of underwater landscapes. Some scientists believe they use echoes from the sounds they produce, similar to how bats navigate in the dark. A team of researchers at McMurdo Station in Antarctica spent years fitting Weddell seals with sensor packs to track their diving patterns. They found the seals were making exploratory dives into areas of the ocean beneath the ice that had never been mapped, traveling into underwater valleys and shelves that scientists did not even know existed. The seals were exploring the deep Antarctic seafloor long before any human mission reached it. In winter, when breathing holes freeze over, Weddell seals use their teeth to rasp and scrape through the ice to keep holes open. Their teeth wear down significantly over a lifetime from this constant ice rasping. Eventually, when their teeth wear too far to maintain breathing holes, the seals die. For a Weddell seal, its teeth are literally its lifeline. Above the ice, another animal faces a different kind of survival challenge, one that relies entirely on other animals to stay alive. There is a bird alive today that should not be. The emperor penguin breeds in winter, full Antarctic winter. Temperatures drop to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. With winds hitting 100 miles per hour, the sun disappears for months. No other bird on Earth breeds in conditions anywhere close to this. Biologists who first documented emperor penguin breeding behavior struggled to explain why any animal would choose the harshest possible season and location to raise a chick. The answer is timing. Emperor penguin chicks take a long time to grow. By breeding in winter, the eggs hatch in early spring, giving the chicks the entire summer feeding season to grow large enough to survive the next winter on their own. Breed in summer, and the chick is too small to survive winter. Breed in winter, and the timing works. But the cost is enormous. After the female lays a single egg, she immediately leaves for the ocean, often walking or sliding over 50 miles across ice to reach open water and feed. She's gone for 2 months. The male stays, alone, on the ice, in the dark, with the egg balanced on his feet tucked under a fold of skin called the brood pouch, to keep it from touching the ice and freezing. For 2 months, the male emperor penguin does not eat. He burns through his Barbadian fat reserves, losing up to 40% of his total body weight. He stands on sea ice in temperatures that would kill a human being in minutes, completely exposed to the worst weather on the planet. And he is not alone. He huddles. The emperor penguin huddle is one of the most efficient heat-sharing systems in the animal kingdom. Thousands of penguins, sometimes over 10,000 in a single group, pressed together in a mass. The penguins on the outside face the wind and slowly shuffle inward as the ones in the center, warmed and recovered, shuffle back out to take their turn on the edge. The huddle rotates continuously so no single penguin stays on the freezing outer edge for too long. Scientists measured the temperature inside a large huddle and found it reached 69 degrees Fahrenheit, over 100 degrees warmer than the air outside. The huddle is a biological heat engine, powered by thousands of individual animals working as a single system. Biologists also discovered that emperor penguins can deliberately lower their own body temperature by several degrees during blizzards, running their metabolism at a reduced rate to stretch their fat reserves further. They are essentially choosing to run cooler, the way you might dim your phone screen to save battery. The egg hatches. The male has just enough energy left to produce a small amount of protein rich fluid from his esophagus to feed the chick for a few days. Then the female returns, fat and full, and the male staggers off to the ocean to eat for the first time in 2 months. The female returning can recognize her specific male out of 10,000 identical looking penguins by his call alone. In the water, waiting for the penguins, something watches, something that learned a trick no scientist expected. In the Southern Ocean, orcas are everywhere. They patrol the ice edges, the open water, and the channels between bergs. They travel in family groups, called pods, of up to 40 animals, and in Antarctica, different pods of orcas have developed different hunting methods. Methods that are specific to this ocean and specific to the prey available here. Scientists who study Antarctic orcas first noticed something strange in the 1990s. One type of orca, now called Type B orcas, was hunting Weddell seals resting on small ice floes. Standard behavior for orcas is to slam into prey or grab it from below. These orcas were doing something completely different. They were making waves. A group of Type B orcas would line up side by side, 20 to 30 feet from a small ice floe where a seal rested. Then they would swim forward together in a coordinated surge, creating a large wave that washed over the floe and knocked the seal into the water. If the seal climbed back onto the ice, they did it again and again, sometimes up to 20 times in a row until the seal was too exhausted to climb back up. This is a learned behavior. Scientists confirmed it by watching mothers actively demonstrate the wave washing technique to their calves, who would attempt it themselves and improve over repeated tries. The calves failed at first, their waves too small, the timing off. Over months, they got better. This is cultural transmission, the passing of knowledge from one generation to the next through teaching, the same way humans teach children skills. Orcas in the Southern Ocean also use a technique called spy hopping, rising vertically out of the water to look over the edge of an ice floe before deciding whether to hunt. They check first. They assess. A brain planning ahead. A team studying Antarctic orcas off the Antarctic Peninsula tracked a single pod for over a decade. That pod refined their wave washing success rate from around 30% to over 70% during that time, demonstrating improvement across years of practice. They were getting better at their job. The orcas also cooperate across pods. Different family groups, which normally have little contact in other oceans, have been observed joining together in the Southern Ocean for large hunts before separating again. The resources in this ocean are rich enough to make cooperation worthwhile even between strangers. There's one animal in the Southern Ocean that no orca consistently targets. One animal so large that even a pod of orcas does not press the advantage. It is the reason the Southern Ocean became the hunting ground it is. Larger than any dinosaur, larger than any animal ever found in the fossil record, alive right now, swimming through the Southern Ocean. The blue whale is the largest animal in the history of life on Earth. A full-grown adult reaches up to 100 feet in length, roughly the same as 3 school buses lined up end to end. It weighs up to 200 tons. Its tongue alone weighs as much as an elephant. Its heart is the size of a small car. And it eats krill. That single fact unsettles most people who hear it for the first time. The biggest animal that has ever existed eats 2-inch shrimp. A blue whale consumes up to 16 tons of krill in a single day during feeding season. To picture 16 tons, that is roughly the weight of 2 fully loaded 18-wheeler trucks, eaten in one day, every day, for several months. The Southern Ocean is the blue whale's primary feeding ground. The krill swarms here are dense enough to make this the most efficient place on the planet to eat. A blue whale lunges through a swarm, opening its enormous mouth and taking in a volume of water and krill the size of a school bus in a single gulp. Its pleated throat expands to hold that water. Then it forces the water out through baleen plates, which act like a giant strainer, leaving the krill trapped inside. Blue whales were nearly hunted to extinction in the 20th century. Before commercial whaling began, scientists estimate the Southern Ocean held over 200,000 blue whales. By the 1960s, that number had collapsed to roughly 400 animals. Industrial whaling ships hunted them faster than they could reproduce, reducing the largest animal on Earth to a population smaller than the students in a large school. An international hunting ban in the 1960s and protections in later decades allowed populations to slowly recover. Scientists now estimate the Southern Ocean blue whale population at between 2,000 and 3,000 animals. Recovery has been slow because blue whales reproduce slowly. A female gives birth to one calf every 2 to 3 years. A blue whale call is the loudest sound produced by any animal on Earth. It can reach 200 decibels, louder than a jet engine, and travel over 1,000 miles underwater. Blue whales use these calls to communicate with each other across vast stretches of ocean. Scientists have recorded blue whales calling to each other from opposite ends of the Southern Ocean, nearly 10,000 miles apart. The heart powering all of this is extraordinary. It beats just twice per minute when the whale dives deep. Between beats, there is a pause long enough that researchers recording heartbeats for the first time thought their equipment had failed. In the deep water below the blue whale's feeding ground, something large enough to challenge it is preparing to hunt. No human has ever seen it happen. But we know it does. Somewhere between 1 and 2 miles below the surface of the Southern Ocean, right now, a sperm whale is hunting a colossal squid. The whale can weigh over 100,000 pounds. The squid can weigh over 1,000 pounds. The water around them is completely black. The pressure at that depth would crush a submarine. Sperm whales dive deeper than almost any other mammal on Earth. They have been recorded at depths below 7,000 feet, well over a mile down. They hold their breath during these dives for up to 90 minutes. When they descend, their lungs actually collapse under the pressure, but their bodies evolve to handle this without damage, storing oxygen in their blood and muscles instead of their lungs. When a sperm whale dives, it goes silent on the way down. Then, at depth, it begins clicking. Those clicks are the loudest sounds produced by any animal, focused into tight beams that bounce off objects in the darkness and return as echoes. The whale builds a three-dimensional picture of its environment using sound alone, identifying the shape, size, distance, and movement of prey in total blackness. The colossal squid knows the whale is coming. Those enormous eyes evolved specifically to detect bioluminescent disturbances in the water, pick up the glowing wake left by the whale's massive body moving through the dark. The squid gets a warning, but the whale is fast at depth and the squid's options are limited. When a battle happens, it leaves evidence on the surface world. Dead sperm whales, when they beach or are found floating, almost always carry circular scars on their skin. These scars are left by the rotating hooks on colossal squid tentacles. Some whales carry hundreds of these scars, concentrated around the heads and jaws where the squid tried to fight back. A few whales have been found with scars over 2 inches wide left by squid tentacle hooks, far larger than any squid ever captured, which means the colossal squid gets bigger than we know. Scientists analyzed the beaks of squid found in sperm whale stomachs. Beaks do not digest easily, and many accumulate over a whale's lifetime. From the size of those beaks, researchers calculated that some sperm whales had eaten colossal squid, far larger than the biggest specimen ever collected. The largest estimated from beak size would have weighed over 1.5 tons. An animal larger than a car, with hooks the size of human fists, living in total darkness 1 mile below the ocean surface. The ocean floor below that battle is stranger still. Scientists did not need to witness the battles. The sperm whales carried the evidence on their skin. Researchers began systematically photographing and measuring circular scars on sperm whales in the Southern Ocean in the 1980s. The pattern across thousands of whales told a story. Almost every mature male sperm whale carried these scars. Females carried far fewer. This was significant because male sperm whales are the ones that dive deepest and travel furthest south into the coldest Antarctic waters. Females and young whales stay in warmer, shallower regions. The deeper the males dove, the more scars they carried. The connection was direct. One research team studying a group of sperm whales off South Georgia Island cataloged scars on 63 individual animals. They found that older males, the largest bulls with decades of deep diving behind them, carried scars in overlapping clusters, layer upon layer of healed wounds across their heads and lower jaws. Each layer represented a separate encounter. These animals had been fighting colossal squid their entire adult lives. Scientists also found fresh scars, open wounds on living whales, still bleeding, circular and deep, meaning the fight had happened recently, meaning the colossal squid had fought back hard enough to cut through blubber and into muscle. The sperm whale did not always win. Dead colossal squid have been found with sperm whale tooth marks on them, evidence the whale did successfully bite. But some squid found floating dead at the surface showed no tooth marks at all, suggesting they died of injuries sustained during the fight rather than from being eaten. Some of those squid were missing tentacles. The floor of the Southern Ocean below these battles holds its own secrets. The carcasses of both animals, when they sink, create events scientists call whale falls. A single blue whale carcass on the ocean floor can support a community of specialized creatures for over 100 years as different species arrive in waves to consume it, from sharks and hagfish in the early stages to tiny bone-eating worms in the final stages. The Southern Ocean seafloor is not empty. It is covered in life that depends on death falling from above. But the strangest life on that floor does not depend on anything falling from above. It depends on heat rising from below. The floor of the Southern Ocean is not cold everywhere. Several hundred miles from Antarctica, in a region of the seafloor that was largely unexplored until the last 2 decades, there are vents, cracks in the ocean floor where superheated water blasts upward from deep inside the earth. The water coming out of these vents can reach over 700 degrees Fahrenheit. The ocean around them, just inches away, is near freezing. These are hydrothermal vents, and the one discovered in the Southern Ocean in 2010 shocked the scientists who found it. A team aboard the research vessel James Cook sent a remotely operated vehicle down to the East Scotia Ridge, a volcanic mountain range running along the seafloor southwest of South Georgia Island. They were expecting sparse life in the cold, dark water below 8,000 feet. What the camera sent back was something else entirely. Fields of white creatures, pale crabs, stacked on top of each other in piles several feet deep, covering the vent chimneys completely. Scientists had never seen this species before. They named them Yeti crabs for their pale, hairy appearance. Thousands of them clustering around the superhot vents, farming bacteria on their own body hair and eating it. Yeti crabs in other parts of the world had been found before, but the Southern Ocean variety was a new species, adapted specifically to the extreme temperature differences of Antarctic vents. They waved their hairy arms slowly through the water near the vents, cultivating the bacterial growth on their arms and then combing it off to eat. But the Yeti crabs were not the strangest thing the camera found. Giant isopods the size of footballs crawled across the vent fields. An isopod is essentially a very large version of a common pillbug, the small armored creature you find under rocks in a garden. In the deep Southern Ocean, without the constraints that limit size in other environments, pillbugs grew to over a foot long and weigh up to 3 pounds. Pale anemones, white octopuses, and eel-like fish moved through these superheated water columns. Everything at this vent was either white or nearly transparent. No sunlight had ever reached this place. Color serves no purpose here, so evolution abandoned it. The life at these vents does not depend on sunlight at all. It runs on chemical energy from the Earth's interior. Scientists call this chemosynthesis, where bacteria convert the chemicals in vent water into energy, the same way plants convert sunlight. Every animal at the vent is eating or eating something that ate those bacteria. This means life on Earth does not strictly need the sun. A discovery like that changes the odds of finding life elsewhere in the universe. And the Southern Ocean has one more secret down here. A sound that confused scientists for over 50 years. For decades, a strange noise echoed through the Southern Ocean, and no one could explain it. Scientists first recorded it in the 1960s using underwater hydrophones, the sensitive microphones that the Navy uses to track submarines. The sound was rhythmic, mechanical, and repetitive. It appeared at specific times of year, in specific regions of the Southern Ocean, and then disappeared. Researchers nicknamed it the bioduck, because to most listeners it sounded exactly like a duck quacking, just slower and deeper. The bioduck repeated in regular intervals, always at the same pitch, always in the same pattern. It showed up in recordings from multiple ocean regions. It sounded artificial, like machinery. For years, some researchers suspected it was equipment noise from distant ships or scientific instruments, but it was biological. The sound moved with living things. It appeared and disappeared with the seasons. The mystery lasted 50 years. 50 years of recordings, conferences, debates, and hypotheses, and no confirmed source. In 2014, a team of researchers attached acoustic tags to Antarctic minke whales near the ice edge in Antarctica and the western Antarctic Peninsula. These tags recorded sounds and tracked the whales' movements simultaneously. When they reviewed the data, the tags recorded the bioduck sound coming directly from the whales. The Antarctic minke whale, one of the smallest baleen whales, had been producing one of the most distinctive and mysterious sounds in the Southern Ocean for decades without anyone connecting the call to the animal. The minke whale had been widely studied. Researchers had tagged them, followed them, studied their behavior. And yet, the bioduck had remained unconnected to them because the sound is so unlike what researchers expected from a whale. Why minke whales make this sound is still studied. It likely plays a role in breeding and communication between individuals, but the specific function is an open question. The call is most frequent during winter months and appears concentrated in areas where minke whales gather under sea ice. What makes this discovery remarkable beyond the 50-year mystery is the implication. Scientists had acoustic recordings from thousands of hours of Southern Ocean monitoring. They thought they understood what they were hearing. and one of the most common animals in that ocean had been making a sound in those recordings the entire time without being recognized. The Southern Ocean is still full of sounds and signals we have not decoded. One of them moves overhead, a bird so efficient at traveling this ocean that it can fly without flapping its wings for hours at a time. The wandering albatross has the largest wingspan of any living bird on Earth. From wingtip to wingtip, it stretches 11 feet, longer than a station wagon. A fully grown adult weighs about 20 pounds, about the same as a large house cat, but its wings span a distance that would reach from the floor to the ceiling of a standard room. It uses those wings in a way that still impresses engineers. The Southern Ocean's endless winds, the same ones that terrified sailors for centuries, are the albatross's engine. The bird uses a technique called dynamic soaring, flying in a repeated figure-8 pattern that exploits the difference in wind speed at different heights above the ocean. Close to the wave surface, wind is slow. 20 feet up, it is fast. The albatross dips toward the water to gain forward speed, then sweeps up into the fast air to gain lift, then dips again. In this cycle, the bird barely needs to flap. Researchers fitted satellite tags to wandering albatrosses in the Southern Ocean and tracked their movements. The results were startling. One bird traveled over 5,000 miles in 11 days. Another flew nearly 800 miles in a single 24-hour period, roughly the distance from New York City to Chicago and back, without stopping. Young wandering albatrosses spend between 5 and 10 years continuously at sea without once touching land. They eat, sleep gliding over the ocean, and travel the entire Southern Ocean in an enormous loop that carries them around the planet multiple times before they return to breed for the first time. They drink seawater. A special gland behind their eyes filters the salt from seawater and excretes it through their nostrils, allowing them to survive without ever needing fresh water. They also have a dark side. Wandering albatrosses are predators and scavengers of the first order. They eat fish, squid, and the remains of dead whales and seals. A group of albatrosses will descend on a whale carcass and strip it with their hooked beaks in hours. The albatross population has been in serious decline for decades, primarily because of long-line fishing boats. These boats drag lines up to 60 miles long with thousands of baited hooks. Albatrosses dive on the bait as the lines are set and get hooked and pulled underwater and drowned. Scientists estimate long-line fishing kills over 100,000 seabirds every year in the Southern Ocean, with albatrosses among the hardest hit. Some fisheries have adopted bird avoidance measures, setting lines at night or using streamer lines that scare birds away. Where these methods are used, albatross bycatch drops by over 90%. Where they are not used, the birds keep dying. The albatross is not just an animal, it is a barometer. When the Southern Ocean is healthy, albatross populations hold. When something in the food web shifts, the albatross is among the first to show it. And right now something at the very foundation of this ocean is beginning to shift. The Southern Ocean does something that no other body of water on Earth does at the same scale. It absorbs heat. Every year, the Southern Ocean soaks up roughly 40% of all the carbon dioxide that human activity adds to the atmosphere. It also absorbs an enormous amount of excess heat from the warming atmosphere. This has been happening for decades. Quietly, invisibly at the bottom of the world, one ocean has been doing the work of stabilizing Earth's climate on a planetary scale. Scientists tracking ocean temperatures globally identified the Southern Ocean as the single most important heat sink on the planet. A heat sink, in simple terms, is something that absorbs energy and stops it from heating up its surroundings. The Southern Ocean acts like a planetary radiator, drawing in warmth that would otherwise raise global temperatures faster than it already does. The mechanism behind this is directly connected to the Antarctic circumpolar current. As that current moves deep, cold water upward to the surface in massive upwelling, it exposes water that has not been at the surface in centuries. That water is cold, dense, and hungry for heat. It pulls energy out of the atmosphere on contact, then sinks back down carrying that heat into the deep ocean where it is stored far from the surface. The problem is the system has limits. Measurements taken over the last 3 decades show the Southern Ocean is absorbing more heat than it used to, and its capacity to absorb additional heat is slowly decreasing. The surface water is warming. Warming water holds less dissolved carbon dioxide. Warming water disrupts the temperature gradients that drive the deep circulation. The engine is still running, but it is running into constraints it has never faced in recorded human history. What does this mean for the predators in this video? Warmer water affects krill reproduction. Antarctic krill depend on sea ice. They breed under it, scrape algae from its underside in winter, and shelter in its shadows during summer. As sea ice extent decreases, krill habitat shrinks. Studies in the Antarctic Peninsula region have documented significant declines in krill density in areas where sea ice has been retreating over recent decades. Every animal in the Southern Ocean food chain notices this. Penguins that breed near krill-poor water raise fewer chicks. Seals that hunt in warmer than normal zones find less prey. Whales travel farther to find the dense swarms they need to maintain their body weight. The Southern Ocean's predators are the top layer of a system that starts with temperature and ends with life. Change the temperature, and the effects ripple upward through every species covered in this video. One part of the Southern Ocean captures this tension more vividly than anywhere else. A floating shelf of ice the size of France suspended over water that no sunlight has ever reached, hiding life that should not be there. By the early 1900s, they were nearly gone. Antarctic fur seals once numbered in the millions across the islands of the Southern Ocean. Then the sealing ships arrived. Hunters discovered that fur seal pelts sold for extraordinary prices in European and American markets. The seals were easy targets. They hauled out on beaches in dense groups, slow on land, unafraid of humans who had never hunted them before. Sealers could walk through a colony and club thousands of animals in a single day. By 1820, South Georgia Island, once home to the largest fur seal colonies on Earth, was effectively empty. The seals were commercially extinct, meaning so few remained that hunting them was no longer profitable. Most sealers simply moved on to hunt elephant seals and penguins for their oil instead. The fur seals that survived were a tiny remnant, a few thousand animals hiding in remote, hard-to-reach coves. They were the lucky ones, or more precisely, the inaccessible ones. Then the hunting stopped, markets changed, international protections arrived, and something remarkable happened. The fur seals came back. From a population estimated at fewer than 100 animals on South Georgia at the start of the 20th century, Antarctic fur seals recovered to over 3 million on that island alone by the 1980s. The recovery rate was one of the fastest documented for any large marine mammal anywhere on Earth. With no hunting pressure, abundant krill, and no serious predators on land, the population exploded. But the comeback created a new problem. 3 million fur seals on South Georgia Island eat an enormous amount of krill, squid, and fish every year. Scientists studying the island's ecosystem found that the recovering fur seal population was competing directly with penguins for food resources near the island. Macaroni penguins on South Georgia declined significantly during the same decades that fur seal numbers surged. Whether the fur seals caused this decline or whether changing ocean conditions drove both trends is an active area of research, with scientists on different sides of the debate. The fur seal recovery also changed the landscape of the island itself. Dense colonies of seals on beaches trample and destroy vegetation. Wallowing grounds form where thousands of animals rest, creating muddy, bare patches of land. Native tussock grass, which took decades to grow, gets flattened by seal bodies within a single breeding season. A species returning from the edge of extinction does not slot quietly back into its old position. It reshapes everything around it, sometimes for the better, sometimes in ways that are still unfolding. The near extinction of fur seals also had a ripple effect that touched an animal far larger, and that ripple changed the krill. When industrial whaling collapsed the whale populations of the Southern Ocean in the 20th century, scientists expected one outcome. They got the opposite. The logic seemed obvious. Remove tens of thousands of enormous krill-eating whales from an ecosystem, and krill should increase dramatically. Whales eat krill. Fewer whales should mean more krill left over. Simple subtraction. Krill populations declined. This result genuinely puzzled marine biologists when the data came in. It contradicted everything the simple model predicted. The Southern Ocean had lost its great whales, and instead of a krill boom, researchers found that krill numbers in many regions had dropped significantly since the peak whaling era. The answer came from understanding what whales actually do to an ecosystem, not just what they take from it. Whales defecate at the surface. This sounds trivial until you realize what whale feces contains. It is rich in iron and nitrogen, the same nutrients that microscopic ocean plants, called phytoplankton, need to grow. A single large whale produces hundreds of gallons of iron-rich waste near the ocean surface every day. That waste fertilizes phytoplankton blooms. Phytoplankton support krill. Krill support whales. The cycle is circular. Whales feed the very food chain that feeds them. Scientists call this the whale pump. When the whale pump was running at full strength, with hundreds of thousands of great whales in the Southern Ocean, phytoplankton productivity was higher. That drove higher krill numbers, which supported more whales. The entire system was self-reinforcing. Remove the whales and the pump stops. Phytoplankton get less fertilizer. Krill production drops. Even though there are fewer animals eating the krill, there are also fewer animals producing the nutrients that allow krill to thrive in the first place. Researchers from Australia and the United States published work estimating that restoring Southern Ocean whale populations to pre-whaling levels could significantly increase the ocean's biological productivity and its capacity to absorb carbon from the atmosphere. Whales, in this model, are engineers of the ocean's chemistry, not just large animals floating through it. The current recovery of some whale populations, particularly humpback whales in the Southern Ocean, is allowing scientists to test this idea in real time. Researchers are measuring phytoplankton levels in areas where recovering whale populations have returned, looking for the signal of the whale pump switching back on. The data is preliminary, but early results suggest the pump is real. What happens at the very bottom of this ocean, on the floor beneath the feeding whales and the krill blooms, reveals a world that runs on entirely different rules, a world under permanent ice, in permanent darkness, where life arrived from somewhere no one expected. The Ross Ice Shelf is the largest body of floating ice on Earth. It covers an area roughly the size of France, jutting off the coast of Antarctica and floating above the ocean surface. Where it meets the sea, its walls rise over 100 feet straight up, sheer and blue-white, like a cliff made of compressed time. Beneath it, the ocean exists in conditions that seemed, until recently, incompatible with life. No sunlight penetrates the ice. The water temperature stays just above freezing year-round. The pressure beneath hundreds of feet of ice is immense. Organic material from the productive surface ocean rarely reaches these depths, blocked by the ice shelf above. By every standard model of marine biology, the seafloor beneath a major ice shelf should be nearly barren. In 2015, a team of scientists drilled through 850 feet of ice and lowered a camera into the water below. They expected to find sediment, possibly some microbial mats, nothing much. The camera found fish. A species of eel-like fish called the cryopelagic fish hovered in the water column below the ice, swimming in water that was barely above the freezing point, in a place where no food source was immediately apparent. Amphipods, small crustaceans related to the krill we met earlier, moved through the water in numbers that surprised the team. The seafloor below showed biological activity that the drilling team's instruments had not predicted. How these animals survive under the ice shelf is a question scientists are still actively investigating. One hypothesis involves currents that carry organic material from the open ocean under the ice shelf edge. Another involves microbial production at the seafloor itself, the same chemosynthesis found at hydrothermal vents, driven by minerals in the rock rather than heat from the Earth's core. A British team drilling through a different section of Antarctic ice in 2021 found something even more surprising. Sessile animals, meaning animals that attach to a surface and stay fixed in place, were growing on a boulder on the seafloor beneath the ice. Sponges and other filter-feeding organisms were attached to a rock over 1,000 miles from the open ocean, in complete darkness, beneath over a half-mile of ice. Filter feeders need particles floating in the water to eat. They cannot hunt. They cannot move to find food. They simply extend their bodies and wait for food to come to them. Finding them 1,000 miles from the nearest open water, with no apparent food source, broke the existing models for how far under ice life could survive. The lead researcher described it as finding a rainforest in a desert. Beneath the ice shelf, the rules of biology bend in ways the surface world never prepared us for. And directly above this hidden world, forces are at work that are changing it faster than any scientist predicted. In 1985, British scientists working at Halley Research Station in Antarctica published a finding that stopped the scientific community cold. They had been measuring atmospheric conditions above Antarctica for years. In their data, they found a dramatic thinning of the ozone layer directly above the continent, a region of significantly reduced ozone concentration that appeared every spring and grew larger each year. It was so unexpected that the team initially assumed their instruments were faulty. They recalibrated everything, checked every reading, and the data held. There was a hole in the sky. The ozone layer sits roughly 15 miles above Earth's surface and acts as a shield, absorbing the most harmful forms of ultraviolet radiation from the sun before it reaches the ground and ocean. Ultraviolet radiation at high doses damages living tissue and disrupts the DNA inside cells. Without the ozone layer, life on the surface of Earth would face radiation levels lethal to most organisms. Above Antarctica each spring, that shield had been severely weakened. The cause was industrial chemicals called chlorofluorocarbons used in refrigerants, aerosol sprays, and manufacturing processes worldwide. These chemicals drifted into the upper atmosphere where they broke down ozone molecules at a rate far faster than ozone could be produced naturally. The polar vortex, a circular wind pattern above Antarctica, concentrated these chemicals over the continent each winter, causing the most severe thinning to occur precisely over the Southern Ocean. The biological impact was immediate. Ultraviolet radiation reaching the surface of the Southern Ocean increased by as much as 15% in the area under the ozone hole each spring. Phytoplankton, the microscopic plants that form the base of the food chain, are highly sensitive to ultraviolet radiation. Studies documented reductions in phytoplankton productivity under the ozone hole of up to 12%. Phytoplankton feed krill. Krill feed everything else. An international agreement signed in 1987, called the Montreal Protocol, banned chlorofluorocarbons globally. It is widely considered one of the most successful environmental agreements in history. Ozone levels above Antarctica have been slowly recovering ever since. Scientists project the ozone hole may fully close by the middle of the century if compliance continues. The Southern Ocean survived this. Its food chain bent but did not break. But a different kind of pressure is now building, one that no single international agreement has yet reversed. Antarctica holds 90% of all the fresh water on Earth, locked inside ice sheets that have been building for millions of years. The continent itself sits under ice up to 15,000 feet thick in places, more than 2.5 miles of compressed frozen water. That ice is melting faster than at any point in recorded human history. Scientists measure the ice using satellites that detect the gravitational pull of the ice mass from orbit. The data shows Antarctica losing ice at a rate of roughly 150 billion tons per year on average, with acceleration in recent years. 150 billion tons is such a large number it is almost meaningless without scale. Picture a cube of ice 6 miles on each side. Antarctica loses that volume every single year, and the pace is increasing. For the Southern Ocean and its predators, the most immediate effect is the loss of sea ice, the seasonal ice that forms on the ocean surface each winter and retreats each summer. This is different from the land ice of Antarctica itself, but equally critical to the animals we have met. The Antarctic Peninsula, the arm of land stretching northward towards South America, has experienced some of the fastest temperature increases on Earth over the past 50 years. Sea ice in that region now forms later in autumn and melts earlier in spring than it did in the 1970s. The winter season has shrunk. For emperor penguins, shorter sea ice seasons mean less stable breeding platforms. If the sea ice breaks up before chicks develop their waterproof feathers, the chicks enter the water too early and drown. Research tracking emperor penguin colonies around Antarctica found that several colonies have experienced repeated breeding failures in recent years when ice breakup came too early. For krill, reduced sea ice means less winter habitat. Krill populations in the western Antarctic Peninsula region have declined by roughly 80% since the 1970s, according to long-term surveys. 80%, in the same time frame that sea ice has retreated most dramatically in that region. For leopard seals and Weddell seals, less sea ice means fewer resting platforms and fewer stable haul-out sites. For orcas using wave washing techniques, fewer small isolated ice flows means fewer hunting opportunities using that specific strategy. Every predator in the Southern Ocean is connected to ice in some way. The ice is the architecture of this ecosystem. Remove the architecture, and everything that lived inside it must adapt, move, or decline. Some species are adapting. Some are moving, some are declining. The trajectories are not uniform, but the pressure is universal. Nobody films the giant petrel for a nature documentary opening shot. It is not beautiful. It is not graceful. It has a large, hooked beak stained with blood and fat. Its face carries a permanent expression of aggression. When it feeds on a whale carcass or a dead seal, it plunges its entire head inside the body cavity and emerges drenched in gore. The giant petrel is the Southern Ocean's cleanup crew, and it is extraordinarily good at a job that everything else ignores. The southern giant petrel has a wingspan of about 7 feet and a body weight of around 11 pounds. It can drink seawater, like the albatross, by filtering salt through a gland. It breeds on sub-Antarctic islands and spends most of its life flying over the Southern Ocean in wide, looping patrol routes that cover thousands of miles. It eats almost anything dead or dying. Whale carcasses, seal pups that did not survive their first storm. Penguin bodies. Fish offal thrown from fishing boats. In the absence of the large carrion, it hunts live prey. Squid, fish, and smaller seabirds, which it attacks and kills with that hooked beak. What makes the giant petrel ecologically important is what happens when it is removed. Scientists studying sub-Antarctic island ecosystems found that seal carcasses on beaches without giant petrels decompose dramatically more slowly. Carcasses that giant petrels stripped to bone in 48 hours took months to break down through bacteria alone. During that time, the rotting carcass attracted flies and bacteria that affected surrounding vegetation and soil chemistry. Giant petrels are also walking disease control. By consuming dead animals quickly, they prevent the buildup of bacteria laden carcasses near breeding colonies of penguins and seals. A rotting whale on a beach near a penguin rookery, left untouched, would become a disease reservoir. Giant petrels eliminate that risk within days. Their population faces pressure from multiple directions. Longline fishing kills them the same way it kills albatrosses. Plastic ingestion is documented in chicks on breeding islands, with parents accidentally feeding plastic fragments collected from the ocean surface to their young. Disturbance at breeding colonies by tourism and research vessels causes adults to flush off nests and abandon eggs. The giant petrel is not the charismatic face of Southern Ocean conservation, but remove it, and the ecosystem loses something that nothing else provides. In the deep water below, where the petrel patrols, there's an animal with no charisma at all. A creature that looks like something from a nightmare and plays a role that scientists are still fully mapping. It looks like a pill bug the size of a football, and it lives in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. Giant isopods belong to the same group of animals as the small gray pill bugs you can find under a rock in any backyard. Those backyard varieties are about half an inch long. The deep-sea giant isopods of the Southern Ocean grow to over a foot in length and weigh up to 4 pounds. They are the same basic body plan, scaled up into something that belongs in a science fiction film. They live on the seafloor in water up to 7,000 feet deep, in near freezing temperatures under crushing pressure. They are slow, armored, and nearly indestructible. When threatened, they curl into a ball, their overlapping plates locking together into a protective sphere. A predator trying to bite through a curled giant isopod is essentially trying to bite through a living shield. They are scavengers of remarkable patience. Giant isopods can survive for over 4 years without eating a single meal, waiting on the seafloor for food to fall from above. When a large carcass does land near them, they move toward it and feed voraciously. Research vessels have filmed giant isopods swarming a baited trap within hours of it reaching the seafloor, arriving from distances that should have taken them days to travel. The mechanism behind their ability to fast for years comes down to their extraordinarily slow metabolism. In cold, deep water, the body processes run at a fraction of the speed of a surface animal the same size. Their heart barely beats. Their digestion moves at a crawl. They are patient in a way no warm-blooded animal can match, because they have almost no biological urgency. Scientists studying giant isopods in the Southern Ocean found that they carry bacteria in their digestive systems capable of breaking down the shells of other crustaceans. This means they can digest prey that most animals cannot touch, accessing nutrition locked inside the hard shells of deep-sea crabs and shrimp that would defeat a less specialized gut. On the seafloor around hydrothermal vents, giant isopods have been found eating the dead carcasses of yeti crabs, turning one extreme deep-sea creature into food for another. The deep Southern Ocean runs on these closed loops of consumption and decomposition, each creature's death feeding the next one's life. Above all of this, on the ice, in the water, and in the sky, the pieces of this ecosystem hold together because of one invisible thread, a thread that is currently under enormous stress. A sperm whale's head takes up roughly 1/3 of its total body length. On a 60-foot whale, that is a 20-foot block of tissue sitting at the front of the animal. For a long time, scientists were unsure exactly what filled all that space. The answer turned out to be a biological acoustic weapon. The sperm whale's enormous forehead houses a structure called the spermaceti organ, a large mass of waxy oil that early whalers prized so highly that they named the entire species after it. For centuries, people thought this organ was simply a fat reserve. Scientists eventually realized it is a precision sound focusing system unlike anything else in the animal kingdom. Inside the spermaceti organ, the sperm whale generates its clicks by forcing air through structures in its nasal passages. Those clicks then pass through the spermaceti oil, which shapes and amplifies them into focused beams of sound. At the front of the head, a structure called the junk, a series of oil-filled compartments separated by cartilage, focuses the beam even further before it exits the whale's forehead. The result is a sonar system built over millions of years of evolution. Those outgoing clicks are the loudest biological sound on Earth. They can reach 230 decibels, louder than a gunshot fired next to your ear, and focused tightly enough to use as a ranging tool to identify objects at distances of over 1,000 feet in total darkness. But there is a second use. Some marine biologists believe sperm whales can use their clicks offensively, projecting a focused beam of sound powerful enough to stun or disorient prey at close range. No one has filmed a confirmed instance of this, and it remains a topic of genuine scientific debate. But the physics of the sound levels involved, combined with observations of prey fish found in disoriented states near sperm whales, has kept the hypothesis alive. What is confirmed is that sperm whales can identify the species, size, and movement direction of prey using echolocation alone in total darkness at depth. A colossal squid 100 feet away in pitch black water is as visible to a sperm whale's sonar as if it was sitting under a spotlight. The sperm whale can also communicate with other whales using patterns of clicks called codas. Each family group has its own specific coda pattern, distinct from other groups, essentially a family signature. Calves learn their family's coda within their first year of life and use it for identification across distances of miles. These codas represent something remarkable: cultural identity in a non-human animal, a learned communication system passed down through generations unique to each family line. In the ocean above the sperm whale's deep hunting grounds, the surface world is changing, and one of the most dramatic changes is happening at the very edge of the ice, where the cold water meets the warming world. The Antarctic minke whale is the most abundant baleen whale in the Southern Ocean. It is also the least understood. Minke whales are small by whale standards, reaching about 30 feet in length, roughly the size of a large moving truck. Their size made them low priority targets during the whaling era, when hunting ships were chasing blue whales, fin whales, and humpbacks. This accident of scale saved them. While every other large whale species in the Southern Ocean was hammered down toward commercial extinction, minke whales survived with their populations largely intact. The result is that today, Antarctic minke whales number somewhere around 500,000 animals, the largest population of any baleen whale remaining on Earth. They are everywhere in the Southern Ocean, traveling under sea ice, feeding in dense krill patches, and producing that mysterious bioduck call that confused the scientists for 50 years. And yet, their lives remained largely invisible until recently. The challenge with studying minke whales is their behavior around boats. They routinely dive beneath approaching vessels and disappear. Early tacking attempts were defeated by this avoidance behavior. Scientists could count minkies from the air, but tracking individual animals to understand feeding patterns, migration routes, and social structure proved extremely difficult for decades. A breakthrough came when researchers developed new suction cup tag technology that could be attached to a whale during a brief approach, released after several hours, and recovered from the surface by GPS tracking. These tags recorded depth, speed, acceleration, sound, and video from tiny cameras mounted on the tag body. The footage revealed minke whales feeding under sea ice at depths researchers had not expected, and in formations suggesting loose coordination between individuals. Multiple minke whales were found feeding in the same general area in ways that concentrated krill more effectively than a single whale hunting alone, though whether this constitutes intentional cooperation or simply independent attraction to the same prey patch is still debated. Minke whales also surprised researchers with their swimming speed. Clocked at over 17 miles per hour in short bursts, they are among the fastest baleen whales in the ocean. That speed may explain their success at avoiding orcas. While humpback and blue whales are too large for orcapods to reliably kill, minke whales are within the size range that orcas can take. Speed is their defense. The minke whale's abundance makes it a key indicator species for the Southern Ocean food web. When scientists want to measure the health of the krill population across the entire ocean, counting minke whales in survey areas gives them a fast, reliable proxy. What the minke whales are telling scientists right now is not entirely reassuring. The number arrived in a scientific paper in 2004, and it still circulates through every conversation about the Southern Ocean's future. In the waters around the Antarctic Peninsula, the region of the Southern Ocean that has warmed fastest over the past 5 decades, krill abundance had dropped by roughly 80% compared to surveys conducted in the 1970s. 80%. An animal that once turned the sea red-pink for miles across had, in specific regions, become dramatically harder to find. The reasons are layered, and scientists are still pulling them apart. Sea ice loss is the clearest driver. Krill breed under sea ice, scrape algae from its underside in winter, and shelter in its shadows from predators during summer. As winter sea ice in the Antarctic Peninsula region has retreated, the habitat krill depend on in winter has shrunk. Krill that survive on reduced winter food reserves enter spring breeding season in poorer condition and produce fewer successful offspring. Ocean acidification adds a second pressure. The Southern Ocean absorbs massive amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. When carbon dioxide dissolves in seawater, it forms a weak acid, which is slowly reducing the ocean's alkalinity. Krill shells contain calcium carbonate, a mineral that dissolves in more acidic water. Studies exposing krill larvae to projected future ocean acidification levels found significantly higher mortality rates in larvae and reduced shell integrity in survivors. A third pressure is simply temperature. Krill eggs require cold water to develop normally. Warmer than average summers in the Antarctic Peninsula region correlate with lower krill recruitment, meaning fewer young krill successfully entering the population each year. Against all of this, there is a counterpoint that scientists are careful to include. Surveys in other regions of the Southern Ocean, particularly around the sea ice zone of East Antarctica and in the waters south of the Indian Ocean, have found krill populations that are stable or even elevated compared to historical estimates. The krill crisis is severe and real in specific regions. It is a warning, documented and measurable. But it is geographically concentrated so far, and the Southern Ocean as a whole retains vast krill biomass. The distinction matters because the response of predators to regional krill decline is already visible and telling. Penguin colonies that once numbered hundreds of thousands of breeding pairs have, in specific locations along the Antarctic Peninsula, declined by half or more over 30 years. Fur seal pup survival rates in affected regions show measurable drops in years when krill are scarce. Minke whale body condition surveys show thinner animals in years of poor krill availability. The food chain is signaling. The signal is clear. Every orca in the Southern Ocean knows who it is related to, and it never forgets. Orca social structure is built around the matrilineal, the family line traced through the mother. A calf stays with its mother for life. When the mother dies, her adult children, male and female, often continue to travel together as a group. The grandmother, if she is still alive, leads the group. Orca pods in the Southern Ocean are grandmother-led societies. Scientists studying orca populations around the world made a startling discovery about the role of older females. Post-reproductive females, meaning females who have stopped having calves, provide significant survival advantages to their grandchildren. In studies of Pacific orca populations, the grandchildren of living post-reproductive grandmothers survived at higher rates than grandchildren whose grandmothers had died. The mechanism appears to be knowledge. Older female orcas have decades of experience finding food, avoiding danger, and navigating their home range. They remember where prey concentrations appeared in past years during difficult seasons. When food is scarce, the grandmother leads the group to locations that younger animals with less experience would not know to try. This is ecological memory stored in living animals. A grandmother orca in the Southern Ocean may carry 60 years of information about krill distribution patterns, sea ice conditions, and prey behavior. That memory is irreplaceable. When she dies, it is gone. In the Southern Ocean, the Type B orcas that use wave washing to hunt seals demonstrate this knowledge transfer directly. Young calves watching their mothers and grandmothers practice the technique and gradually learning it are accumulating skills that took generations to develop and refine. The pod is a living library. Southern Ocean orcas also exhibit something called fission fusion dynamics. The pod does not always stay together. Smaller groups split off to hunt independently, then rejoin the larger group. The splits and joins happen in patterns that suggest coordination rather than random movement, with the pod maintaining awareness of its scattered members through underwater vocalizations. Researchers studying Southern Ocean orcapods found that some family groups maintain distinct call dialects that differ from neighboring pods. These dialects are stable over decades and are passed from mothers to offspring. Two pods hunting in the same water on the same day may be using completely different sound patterns to communicate, as different from each other as two human languages. The culture of these animals, the knowledge, the techniques, the dialects, all of it lives inside the living members of each pod. It is not written down. It is not stored anywhere but in living memory. And when a population is reduced, that culture is the first thing lost and the last thing recovered. The Weddell Sea sits on the eastern side of the Antarctic Peninsula, a roughly circular body of water almost entirely enclosed by ice for most of the year. Its surface looks empty, frozen, white, and still under a sky that offers little light for months at a time. Below that surface, the Weddell Sea does something that affects every ocean on the planet. Scientists call it Antarctic Bottom Water Formation, and it is one of the most powerful processes in global ocean circulation. Here's what happens. In winter, the intense cold of the Weddell Sea freezes the surface water rapidly. As seawater freezes, it leaves its salt behind in the water underneath. That remaining water becomes saltier. Saltier water is denser. Dense water is heavier, it sinks. The water that forms at the surface of the Weddell Sea in winter is the densest, coldest, saltiest water produced anywhere in the global ocean. When it sinks all the way to the bottom. It then flows northward along the ocean floor, spreading out beneath warmer water above it, reaching the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, and the Pacific over the course of centuries. The Weddell Sea is producing the deep layer of water that fills the bottom of every major ocean on Earth. This process, called thermohaline circulation, drives the global conveyor belt of ocean water that distributes heat, nutrients, and oxygen across the entire planet. The cold bottom water produced in the Weddell Sea eventually rises again in warmer regions, completing a loop that takes over 1,000 years from start to finish. Oceanographers monitoring Antarctic bottom water formation have documented a troubling trend. The volume of dense bottom water being produced in the Weddell Sea has decreased over the past few decades. The surface water is warming slightly, the ice is forming a little later, and the resulting water is marginally less dense than it used to be. A small change in the starting conditions produces a measurable reduction in the circulation it drives. For the predators of the Southern Ocean, the immediate effects are indirect but real. Reduced circulation means slower upwelling of nutrients to the surface, which means less phytoplankton production, which ripples up to krill, fish, seals, and whales. The engine that powers the food web runs on the same physical process that powers global ocean circulation. These are the same waters, the same physics, the same chain. The seamounts of the Southern Ocean are underwater mountains that rise from the seafloor but never break the surface. Around their peaks in water that is still dark but not as crushing as the abyssal depths, something remarkable happens. Currents strike seamounts and are forced upward. That upwelling brings deep, nutrient-rich water to shallower depths where light can reach it. The result is a localized explosion of life around the seamount peak, like a reef in the middle of the open ocean. Seamounts in the Southern Ocean are among the most biologically productive features in this part of the world. They are also ancient. The seamounts of the South Pacific and Southern Ocean formed tens of millions of years ago, and have been biological oases ever since. The peaks host cold water coral communities that grow at a rate of a fraction of an inch per year, building structures that may be thousands of years old. A single coral colony on a Southern Ocean seamount can be older than most European cities. These corals are the foundation of seamount ecosystems. Fish shelter among their branches. Invertebrates colonize their surfaces. Larger predators follow the fish. A seamount without its coral base is a bare rock. A seamount with its coral intact is a city of biological activity rising from an otherwise empty seafloor. Deep-sea fishing boats discovered Southern Ocean seamounts decades ago. Bottom trawls, which drag weighted nets across the seafloor, decimated coral communities on known seamounts within years of their discovery. A coral structure that grew for 2,000 years was destroyed in a single trawl pass. Some Southern Ocean seamounts now sit within marine protected areas that prohibit bottom trawling. Others remain outside protected zones and continue to be fished. The difference in biological health between protected and unprotected seamounts is visible and dramatic. Protected seamounts retain diverse coral communities and high fish densities. Unprotected ones often show bare rock where coral once grew. The seamounts matter to the predators of this video because they concentrate prey in ways the open ocean cannot. Seals travel to seamounts to hunt. Sperm whales visit seamounts to feed on the squid that aggregate around their peaks. Albatrosses patrol above seamounts looking for fish brought to the surface by the upwelling. Remove the seamount's biological richness, and these aggregation events stop. An ecosystem is a set of overlapping dependencies. The corals need the current, the fish need the corals, the seals need the fish, the orcas need the seals. Pull one thread and the structure loosens. There is one place in the Southern Ocean where almost nothing has changed. The deep waters around the South Sandwich Islands, a remote volcanic archipelago far in the southern Atlantic sector of the Southern Ocean, sit within one of the most pristine marine environments left on Earth. Commercial fishing here is minimal. Tourism is nearly non-existent. The islands themselves are uninhabited and difficult to reach, surrounded by some of the roughest sea conditions in the world. The waters here retain krill densities that researchers describe as comparable to historical estimates from before major human disturbance of the Southern Ocean. The seamounts offshore hold intact cold water coral communities. The seabird colonies on the islands number in the millions. Macaroni penguins, chinstrap penguins, and southern rockhopper penguins breed here in concentrations rarely seen elsewhere. For scientists, this area functions as a reference point, a baseline. When they want to know what a healthy, undisturbed Southern Ocean looks like, they compare other regions to the South Sandwich Islands. What they find in that comparison clarifies exactly what has been lost elsewhere. Krill swarms around the South Sandwich Islands are denser. The predators feeding on those swarms are in better body condition. Breeding success rates for penguins and albatrosses are higher. Sperm whales aggregate in higher densities. The food web here functions closer to the way scientists believe the entire Southern Ocean once functioned before industrial whaling, industrial fishing, and climate change began reshaping it. The lesson from undisturbed places is that the Southern Ocean's predators are capable of extraordinary abundance. The leopard seals, the orcas, the blue whales, the colossal squid are all still present and functioning in this ecosystem. The system works, the animals are resilient. What they are resilient against is the pressure of biology and weather and ice and deep current. They evolved for that. They did not evolve for what humanity has added to the equation in the last 200 years. The South Sandwich Islands will not stay pristine forever. Climate change does not respect boundaries drawn by humans. The warming waters of the Southern Ocean are moving south and east, and the krill habitat here will eventually face the same pressures already visible along the Antarctic Peninsula. But right now, this region is proof that the giants are still here, proof that the system still works when given the chance. Scientists have been listening to the Southern Ocean for decades with instruments that track temperature, salinity, ice cover, whale populations, krill densities, and ocean chemistry. The data is vast. The message is increasingly unified. The Southern Ocean is under stress. Sea surface temperatures across the Southern Ocean have been rising. In 2023, sea ice around Antarctica reached its lowest recorded extent. The previous record had been set in 2022. The year before that had set records too. 3 consecutive years of record low sea ice is a pattern that caught scientists globally off guard with its speed. A research team tracking emperor penguin colonies from satellite imagery found that in 2023, 4 out of 5 emperor penguin colonies in the Bellingshausen Sea region experienced total or near total breeding failure because the sea ice beneath their breeding sites broke up before their chicks had developed waterproof feathers. The chicks entered the water and died. A single bad year is weather. 3 or 4 consecutive bad years is a trend. The trend now extends over multiple variables simultaneously: sea ice, ocean temperature, species breeding success, krill density in key regions, and the synchrony of these declines is what concerns the scientists watching the data most closely. Marine biologist Cassandra Brooks, who has spent years working on Southern Ocean conservation, described the ocean as operating near the edge of its buffering capacity. Buffering capacity means the ability to absorb change without shifting into a different state. An ocean that has absorbed heat for decades can keep doing so until it cannot. When that threshold is crossed, the change in the system can be rapid and hard to reverse. The Southern Ocean has not crossed that threshold yet. Scientists are careful to say that. The blue whales are still feeding, the emperor penguins are still breeding in most colonies, the orcas are still teaching their young to hunt, but the margin is shrinking. The same ocean that produces predators too big to ignore, that drives global circulation, that absorbs nearly half of humanity's carbon emissions, is now receiving more change than it has experienced at any previous point in its human-observed history. What happens next depends on decisions made far from the Southern Ocean itself. The Southern Ocean is the furthest place on Earth from where most people live. Most people will never see it. Most people will never feel its wind, hear its waves, or watch a leopard seal drag a penguin into the water. It is remote in a way that makes it easy to treat as someone else's problem. It is not someone else's problem. The Southern Ocean produces between 15 and 40% of the planet's oxygen through the phytoplankton floating in its surface waters. Every third or fourth breath you take, no matter where you live, includes oxygen that came from the Southern Ocean. You are breathing this ocean right now. The Southern Ocean absorbs carbon dioxide at a scale no forest on Earth can match. If it stopped absorbing carbon tomorrow, the rate of atmospheric warming would accelerate meaningfully within years, affecting agriculture, weather patterns, and sea levels across every continent. The ocean circulation driven by the Weddell Sea's dense bottom water formation regulates temperature patterns across the Atlantic. When oceanographers model what happens to European and North American climate if that circulation weakens significantly, The results include disrupted rainfall patterns, colder winters in northern Europe, and stronger Atlantic storms. The Gulf Stream, which keeps the eastern United States and western Europe dramatically warmer than their latitudes would otherwise allow, is connected to and partly driven by the deep circulation originating in the Southern Ocean. The krill of the Southern Ocean are not just food for whales and penguins, they also absorb carbon. When krill feed at the surface and then dive, they carry carbon downward in their bodies and feces, effectively transporting it from the atmosphere to the deep ocean. Scientists estimate that krill alone move tens of millions of tons of carbon into the deep ocean every year, a biological carbon pump running quietly at the bottom of the world. The predators of the Southern Ocean are the visible surface of a system that is holding the planet together in ways that most people alive today have never been told. The blue whale is not just magnificent, it fertilizes the ocean that feeds the plankton that produces the oxygen in your lungs. The krill are not just food, they are a carbon transport system. The Weddell Sea is not just cold water, it is the engine of global ocean circulation. Every creature in this video is a working part of a machine that makes Earth livable. The Southern Ocean is asking a question right now through its retreating ice, its declining krill patches, its record-breaking warm years, and its struggling penguin colonies. The question is whether the world will notice before the machine starts to break.